What's going on, guys? Sickbit here, aka Meek, coming at you with another Draft League Presents. Today we're going to be going over Mew. Alright, so we're using this WPF Season 6 Master Copy again. And Mew is in the 18 points region, which I agree with. Yeah, I agree with. Absolutely agree. I think this is a top 3, top 4 Pokemon in the Gen 7 or Gen 8 format. I think it's a phenomenal Pokemon. I think in Gen 8 it's so powerful. It might, it's on that ban cusp. And it's a great first pick. It's a great first pick. I think if it ever gets to the second round, which it never will, I don't think that I think it should be drafted 100%. As long as you don't have another Psychic type. Or another, actually, if you don't have a Psychic type, I think you should take this Pokemon. If you have a free tier 1 slot, I think it's phenomenal, and it does literally everything. I'm trying to think. I don't think it doesn't do anything really, really well. It's one of the most average Pokemon in terms of stats. Well, not average. Actually, it's above average in stats. But a lot of its sets are really phenomenal, and it can do so many different things. And for that reason, I think it is one of the best draft league mons, because it's so versatile, and whatever it can do, it does. And it's not going to do it at the best of the best. Like, it's not going to wall break like a Kira Black. It's not going to support like a Clefable. It's not. Yeah, it's difficult, to compare it to the best mons in the format in their respective categories, but it will do. It can do everything pretty well. Not the best, but because it can do everything so well, it's the best in the league, and it's one of the best in the league format. So top 3, top 4. That's just my opinion. That's where I've seen it going, and I think it will continue to go. If it's not banned further down the line into Gen 8. So I think it's here to stay. I think it's going to keep getting picked. But let's get into why I think that. So we got Mew here. It is a, what do you call it? Not genie. It's like a fairy. What is it called? There's a certain name that you give these mons that have 100 stats. Shaman. Those kind of Pokemon that have their 100 stats. It's escaping me at the moment. But we will avoid the stats for a second and look at the typing. So, Psychic, a great defensive typing, a great offensive typing. Actually, defensive, it's very, very good. A lot of the times you want a bulky Psychic and a bulky Water. A lot of the times. I think a bulky Water is really, really phenomenal in Draft League, and I think I usually go budget with my Psychic types. I either go budget or really high tier. There's not really an in the middle unless I'm getting like a Slowbro or a Slowking. But the Psychic types, you usually want a bulkier Psychic type or a really, really offensive one. So there's the two extremes. You can do both. He can be very, very offensive physically or specially with Nasty Plot and Swords Dance. And then also can be super, super defensive or super, super special defensive. And with the balanced speed of 100, it's a pretty good speed tier. It obviously it is one of the most used speed tiers is 100, but it's very good for Gen 8. For all the incoming Gen 8 Pokemon, except for like maybe Dragapult or something like that, obviously. But all the other Pokemon, essentially, it's going to be faster than naturally. Now, the big thing about Mew is it has a great defensive typing, great offensive typing, but also its ability is pretty good. And it's not crazy good, but if you ever Toxic this Pokemon and you any type of ailment that this Pokemon receives, it also gives back. So it's not something that you necessarily want to Toxic unless you're either a Steel type or a Poison type, unless you're immune, right? It's not something you want to Paralyze unless you're an Electric type yourself. So that's an interesting thing to think about, like Serperior Claire that's going to glare right back. So you don't want to do that, right? Maybe if you're, I don't think that you can get paralyzed when you're behind a sub. So maybe that's an outplay there. But for the most part, you don't want this. You don't want to be toxicking unless you are immune. And every other ailment, burn, all those kind of things. So I think that's really interesting for a wall or even a offensive sweeper to reflect your ailments and still be able to beat the other Pokemon that you are battling most times if you can reflect it back. So I think that's really interesting. Again, the stats really balanced. It's able to do physically offensive, which is a slept-on set, is the physically offensive set. And I think that you either go special attacking or you go really defensive. I feel like those are the really two common sets. This is what we're going to talk about here is a Suicide Lead, which I would never recommend from you. I think it's too versatile to just do a Suicide Lead, in my opinion. That's just mine. But it does it really well. Obviously, it's got to be one of the best Suicide Leads in the game, maybe barring Cloyster, or probably Cloyster's really phenomenal for a Suicide Lead. But this almost guarantees Stealth Rocks. It has Stealth Rock spikes, it has Toxic spikes, it has it has all the hazards. I don't know if it gets Sticky Web actually. Excuse me. Doesn't get Sticky Web that I can see. Yeah, it doesn't get Sticky Web, so that's the only hazard that it is missing. But it gets all the others. It gets Taunt. It's a really good speed tier for a Taunt user. Fast Taunt users are pretty good. It says that you run a red card here, which allows you to force the other Pokemon. If Mew survives a hit, it forces the other Pokemon out. So that could be very useful. Again, Suicide Lead, so you want to kind of counter their lead in any way you can, and try to get up as many spikes in Stealth Rock, and then as many spikes as you can get. And I guess that's for coverage Flare Blitz, which is awesome. That's a really powerful fire attack that it gets. But we'll move past this. This set, I wanted to talk about a defensive set. And the defensive set is like a Will-O-Wisp, Stealth Rock, Roost, and then pick your coverage move that you need to hit the opposing rocker or the opposing check to you. Maybe albeit with like a taunt. Maybe you think they're going to bring taunt against you to try to taunt your Mew. So that's something that you can bring a coverage for. And then usually leftovers with a really defensive to survive one hit, and then get a Will-O-Wisp on a really big physical attacker that can really do really well. Another set that I wanted to talk about is a Dual Dance set. So Agility, Nasty Plot, and then 2 coverage moves to sweep the team. Usually maybe you could do like a Stored Power. Maybe you could do maybe that's not too good because you want to use that Nasty Plot. Maybe Psychic. And then just a coverage move to hit whatever you can't hit Psychic with. Maybe a Fighting type move to hit a Dark type or something like that. So I think those are the 2 really good sets. I think a physical attacking Dragon Dance set is something that is new to this. That is new to the generation. I don't think Mew got Dragon Dance before, so that's pretty new. And it's very deadly, very strong, very strong setup move. Which really can accentuate that physical attack and that speed to really boost it to the next level. And something that you don't really have to invest too much speed into, because you know that once you get 2 Dragon Dances up, you can sweep the team not only with your physical attack, but with your speed, being able to outspeed everything. So you can invest a little bit more into your bulk, so that you can survive 2 hits from whatever you need to set up on, right? So I think that's pretty interesting. I know that Mew a lot of the time is used poorly because it always falls into that defensive role of Defog and Stealth Rocks and Spike Setter and defensive check with Will-O-Wisp and stuff like that. But Mew can do that really well, but it can also do other sets, just like the Nasty Plot, the Dual Dance, Agility, Nasty Plot, and then the Dragon Dance with 3 coverage moves, or 2 coverage moves and Roost maybe. So that's just something kind of to think about whenever you draft your Mew. what more or less you maybe either want to start with Mew or end with Mew in terms of when you team build. So that's just something to think about. Don't try not to get stuck in the same set every week. Okay, so there's a lot of coverage moves. This is probably the most coverage moves that you will ever see on a Pokemon. So we're gonna go through these pretty quick, so that we can try to keep the video smaller. But I will say I will try to put emphasis on moves that I believe that are really, really strong that you will use on your Mew sets. Maybe 70-75% of the time, right? Because you don't want to use the same sets every single week. So acrobatics with weakness policy could be interesting. You have dual dance with agility, so you could agility and then use acrobatics with weakness policy after it pops. So that could be pretty interesting. Gets air slash here. Gets Aqua Tail, which is okay, kind of misses. Aura Sphere is pretty good. Aurora Veil is a slept-on move, but it's really, really good. It's a great baton pass switcher if your league allows passing of speed and passing of Calm Mind, Nasty Plots, Dragon Dances, etc. So that could be interesting. I don't recommend Blaze Kick. I think there's better fire moves. Blizzard's okay. Brave Bird's great. You got Bug Bite is okay. Bug Buzz is used. Bulk Up sets are interesting. Rather a Dragon Dance, but it has its uses if your speed tier is better than the opponent's. Burning Jealousy is not a crazy Pokemon in my opinion, or a crazy move in my opinion. It's a lot better for doubles. That's just my opinion. Calm Mind's really good. Charm's pretty good. CC, or Close Combat, excuse me. Cosmic Power's really strong, and that can really sweep a lot of teams. With Cosmic Power, I've seen Counter do really well. Cross Poison's pretty good. Crunch is good. Curse is not good. Dark Pulse, Dazzling Gleam, that's really good that it gets fairy coverage because there's a lot of dark types that can beat Mew at times. So that's pretty good. Dazzling Gleam, Defog's pretty good. And then you have your Dragon moves here. You get Dragon Dance, Claw. I don't think you get Outrage, but I could be wrong. We'll see in a second. But that's a really good set here. The Dragon Dance. I don't know that you're going to run Dragon Claw too often. But later on we'll see that you get a physical Psychic move to really capitalize on that Dragon Dance with Stab. Drain Punch is interesting for setup. But you're not getting stabbed, so it's not really hurting too much. You'll have to get a couple of boosts before you can actually use that effectively. Dual Wing Beat's okay. I don't really prefer it. Had 90% accuracy. It doesn't hit. It doesn't hit to me. It doesn't. I don't know. I've seen it not hit a lot. It feels like 70%. It feels like a Hurricane. It truly does to me. It gets Earth Power and Quake, so that's pretty good. Let's see here. It gets Electroweb, which is an interesting. Gets Encore. That's really, really good in my opinion. I really think Encore is really underrated. It's a really strong move. Endeavor's okay. Endure is pretty good for weakness policy set. Maybe. Fake Out's okay. Fire Blast, of course. It gets a lot of fire coverage here. You can see it gets Flame Charge as well. Flamethrower, Flare Blitz. Flip Turn's an interesting one if you don't want to use U-Turn. But it does get U-Turn, I believe. Flip Turn's okay too. If you need to hit maybe a Mamoswine on the way out, that could work instead of U-Turn. Frost Breath is always a critical hit on a 60 power move, so it's essentially Ice Beam. But yeah, it always criticalling always having a critical hit means that it can go through boosts. So that could be interesting for maybe something that is boosting up their special defense, for instance. You know that you always have this in the back to take care of it, right? Grassy Glide's interesting. Of course, most of these that I'm talking about of note are Gen 8 moves that it just received. So it's gonna receive a lot of these. So that's just something to think about. Gets Gyro Ball. You're not gonna be using that too much actually. Gunk Shot's pretty usable though. Heat Wave. Not going to use that too much. It does get Hurricane, does get Hydro Pump. Hypnosis is okay. Here's Ice Beam. If you don't need that crit chance because you don't think he's going to set up, then you don't need to use Frost Breath. Plus, Frost Breath is 90% accurate, but that's just a thought. Gets Icicle Spear here. Incinerate's okay. Iron Head's great. over knockoff or over Iron Tail unless you absolutely need the damage. Knockoff's great. Lash Out is pretty good. Leaf Blade, Leaf Storm's okay. Gets both screens. So here's Light Screen. Down here is Reflect down here. So that's pretty good. Gets Magic Coat. So you're not just in. You don't have to limit yourself to just saying, okay, if he leads a rocker against me, is he guaranteed getting rocks up? Absolutely not. One, you have Defog, and two, you have Magic Coat. So those are two ways to do it. Also gets Magnet Rise if you want to set up with something that's pretty weak to ground moves. Definitely could do that if you're fearing something and you're not able to get Tapu Bulu, for instance, or Rillaboom, something like that can protect that ground weakness that you have. That could be interesting. Let's see here. Mystical Fire is a good move. I think that's a really, really not slept on because a lot of people like it, but I don't think it's used as much as it should be, in my opinion. That 100% lowering of the special attack is really, really strong. Nasty Plot's really strong. Here's Outrage, so that's your stronger dragon move if you absolutely need a dragon move. Gets Pain Split, which is good. Play Rough. Poison Jab. Pollen Puff's okay. It's really, really stupid in VGC. Poltergeist is pretty good. That's a really strong Ghost type move, physically. Does have a chance to miss, but it is really, really strong. Make sure you're not running like a crazy knockoff core with this because it's going to fail if you don't have an item. So Power Whip is pretty good. Psychic Fangs is pretty good. I have another physical Psychic move. Here's your special. Psycho Cut's up. You're always going to use Psychic Fangs, because it also busts screens up. Psyshock for physical, or for special hitting physical. Recycle could be interesting. Let's see here. Get your Rock Polish if you don't want to use Agility for some reason. Roost here, that's your reliable recovery. Get Scale Shot and Scald. Scald is really, really, really cool, I think, for this mon to get Scald because, this is one of the most spammable water type moves in the game. That or Steam Eruption, in my opinion. I think Steam Eruption, is a really, really strong move, and Volcanian's a little bit slept on, but that's just my opinion. Let's move on. Shadow Ball, Shadow Claw here. You get Sludge Bomb, Sludge Wave. Smart Strike's okay. Snarl's pretty good. Soft Boiled. I think you always want to use Roost, in my opinion, but Soft Boiled's there as well. I've seen a double Soft Boiled, double Roost for a PP stalling Suicune, so it definitely has its uses. Let's see here. Stored Power here. Steel Roller. If you're facing, one of the Tapus, it's a really, really strong move. Sucker Punch is pretty good. You get Super Fang on a lot of defensive sets. You get, I've seen Super Fang been used a lot. Get Surf, but I prefer Scald, even though it's 10 base power lower. That burn chance is just so crazy. It's absolutely, it's just crazy. Gets SD if you want to boost. Not using Synthesis. Tailwind is interesting support. Taunt's great. So it gets electric coverage on both sides, Punch and Bolt. So that's pretty good. Here's your Toxic Spikes. Of course, it gets Toxic. Trick Room could be that 120 base power triple axle now. So that's got a chance. It's got U-turn here if you don't want to use Flip Turn, of course. Interesting Priority and Vacuum Wave. Volt Switch, Willow, Wild Charge, Whirlwind's pretty good. X-Scissor, Zen Headbutt for a little bit stronger. Actually, you're always going to use Psychic Fangs unless you think that you want that flinch. Some people do play like that, so that's something interesting to look at. Worry Seeds could be interesting for Pokemon that are immune to Toxic, like let's say Gliscor, for instance. You come in on Gliscor, he's Toxic, he's Toxic Core, Poison Heal. You Worry Seed, and now he's getting Toxic. Now and eventually he'll have to switch out. You'll get your rocks up, you'll get whatever you want, your boosts, so that's something interesting to look at. And I think that's it for all of the coverage, which look at that coverage. That is why it's one of the best Pokemon in the game, is because of its coverage, because of its priority, because of its sets, because its stats, its typing, its ability. It's a great Pokemon. Okay, I can't talk enough good about this. If this is here, if this Pokemon's available at, let's say, pick 10, 11, and you don't really want to go with Megas. A lot of Megas have been picked, and that's why Mew hasn't been picked. So you go with, you go with Mew, right? So you have one of the most versatile Pokemon. You literally have the only thing that this role, the only role that Mew fits is the Psychic typing role. You don't want to get another Psychic typing, right? But you literally can get whatever else that you want. It's like you're doing your pick over again, because you have such a versatile Pokemon. Now, I don't think it's the craziest wall breaker, but it has a chance to be that. If you absolutely need it to, it can do that with Nasty Plot, with Swords Dance. It has that ability, right? It takes a little bit longer to set up, so it's not an immediate offense. It's not an immediate offensive presence, but with its super effective coverage, if there's a Pokemon with a 4x weakness, it can definitely fill that role and fill it with a strong, super effective move. It's a strong one. It's not an Icy Wind. It's an Ice Beam. It's a Frost Breath. So this is not. It's not gonna mess around. It's got great coverage, and it's got strong coverage. It's got pretty strong stats. So something that, moving on, past Mew and looking at how you would want to build your team around Mew, you definitely want some offensive presence. I think that this thing can definitely I can definitely support. It is one of the best utility mons in the game, right? Dealing with all kinds of threats, but getting offensive threats can really put Mew into a bind, to put him into a defensive set or a Stealth Rock Spikes kind of Suicide Lead set. But it can also give you that option to where, okay, let me bring this guy a little bit more defensive. One of your usual offensive presences, let me bring him more defensive. Let me set up with you and let me go to town, because he won't be expecting it. Because I have so many other threats, I need to set up with you, work him that way. So that could be something interesting. I think you need 2 more Stealth Rockers, in my opinion, after Mew, to really not put it into that role. And then I think you need a Dark and a Fighting type. I think if you complete the Psychic Dark Fighting core with really strong Mons, you still need to get your Steel, you still need to get your Fairy. I think and Fire, Water, Grass a little bit less, because you're working with your Dark Fighting Psychic. Dark Fighting Psychic core. But I think a Dark type is really strong, resisting Ghosts, resisting a lot of Darks, resisting a bunch of the weaknesses except for Bug. So Fighting's pretty good for that. Fighting's a pretty good typing to take as well. There's not very many Fighting types that are great. A lot of them were Megas. Medicham, Gallade Mega, and then Lopunny. So there's not really a lot of good Fighting types. So those are kind of sparse. And then a lot of the other Fighting types are going to be a little bit weaker. Terrakion, Cobalion, Virizion, Mienshao. They're going to be a little bit weaker. Lucario is one. Conk is okay. They're going to be a little bit weaker, except for Conk. Conk's a little bit tankier, but those are few and far between. I think Bisharp is a pretty good matchup, because a lot of the time, if Mew is in that role with Spike stacking, Stealth Rocking, you bring in Bisharp on a Defog, boom, 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 +2/+2, and he's hitting something, at +2 with either a Sucker Punch if you need priority, or a really strong Iron Head or Knockoff, and that's going to do a lot of damage. So that's something interesting to think about, is Bisharp is pretty good. It's definitely doable at 18 points and 12 points respectively. Usually Bisharp's a tier 2, and I don't see him picked very often, because he's got that 4x fighting weakness, but that is resisted with Mew. So those are things that you can really complement yourself off of. Something to think about is there's not very many strong Bug types. There's Volcarona as one that I can think of. Maybe Mega Beedrill is going to be a problem with that kind of core that you're building. But there's not a lot of strong bug types, so building something that's weak to U-turn, it's not really, it's kind of frowned upon, but at the same time, it can be strong. Because you have ways to deal with those bug types with Mew if you need to, and you have, 9 other Pokemon to kind of figure those kind of things out. So I think that's really it for me. I do want to reinforce again that Mew is a top 4, top 5 Pokemon. Could be top 3. Some people say it should be banned. In some leagues it is banned, and a couple that I was a part of, or a couple that I am a part of, Mew is banned in those leagues in Gen 8 because of so many sets. So that's just something to think about, especially if you're presented with the chance to draft him. I think if you haven't tried him out, I think you should try him out. The versatility will amaze you. I think that's it from me. So that's Sickbid, aka Meek, with another Draft League Presents, and we'll see you later.